Hello, everyone. My name's Louis Yakumi from El Connect. Some of you might remember me from my days at Automotive Logistics, but now working independently. And this is one of my new kind of conversations. We're calling it Behind the Exec because I think it's interesting. We all see a lot of information, interviews, speeches at conferences, and things like that about some of the leading logistics executives. But I think it's interesting to understand the person behind the job title, because I think one thing that we're learning more and more is how important the people are. There's a lot of talk about AI and technology and so on, but still, thank goodness, the people are still going to be the most important thing in the automotive supply chain. So it's great to have a conversation to do today with one of the most important stalwarts from the automotive logistics and supply chain industry. It's great to have with me today Martin Corner, the head of supply chain for Aston Martin. Hello, Martin.
Good to speak to you as ever.
Good. So we'll start a little bit on your early life. What was your dream to be? Did you dream of being a logistics or supply chain guy when you were a young lad, or did you have different aspirations at early ages?
Good question. I like being called a stalwart because it reminds me I've been in the game a lot longer than I like to think. Because in my mind, I still probably think I'm a young lad, but no. Growing up, being a northeast lad, I grew up in Middlesbrough. My dad was from Hartlepool. So although most of us lump us all in as Geordies, I'm a Teessider really. But I was a cliched northeast lad. I played a lot of football from the moment I could walk until the moment my back gave in my early 40s. And I dreamt of being a footballer. Flirted with being decent at it as a young age. Would have loved to have made a professional. But really, that was my obsession. Football, cricket, music and reading actually were my passions. School tended to get in the way. Did all right at school, but no, I think I probably couldn't have even spelt the word logistics until I left university and got my first real job really. But no, definitely cliched northeast lad, passionate football player and supporter, and in the summer had to make do with cricket, which was also a passion. So no, definitely that would have been my dream. But sadly, I wasn't quite good enough.
Yeah. So you wouldn't have been the next Isak, earning whatever it is now, $500,000 a week or whatever they earn, these footballers nowadays.
No, sadly not. It's so different. A lot of the football generation I grew up with, I was lucky enough to play with it was called Borough Boys, which was like a junior team of Middlesbrough. And I flirted with that, even though I knew I was never going to be one of the ones who made it. But those were in the days of Middlesbrough played at a ground called Aston Park.
Yeah.
And the stadium was a proper old-fashioned centre of the town, terraces, and the training gym was like a little gym in the back of the stand. Yeah. And you think of I see some of my friends' kids, the ones who've got boys who are training with Aston Villa and things. Yeah. The 5-year-olds are playing on these wonderful 5G pitches with 15 coaches and fantastic training routines. And it was go for a run and play a game of five-a-side, really. And that was the extent of the professionalism. And a lot of the old pros would end up doing coaching or running pubs. It was a very different time where they could earn money, but once they were in their 30s and they packed the game in, they had to, you had lots of stories. They became landlords, postmen, you name it. So no, even then it wasn't something you went in for money. It was for the love of the game. So it's totally different now. These days it's a career. And if I'd had a boy, I've got 3 girls. If I'd had a boy, I think I would have been crossing my fingers to be their manager. I'd have been retiring from the logistics game and managing my son's career through the Premier League. That would have been my new dream, but sadly that's not going to happen either.
Well, I don't know. The women's, the Lionesses are doing very well as well. So, they're
very true.
Yeah. So I was going to ask whether you were Newcastle or Sunderland, but are you Middlesbrough or?
Well, I'm going to say sadly I'm not even Middlesbrough. I partly wish I was Middlesbrough. My dad was from Hartlepool, so I've been a Hartlepool fan. So I've trundled around the old third and fourth division, or League One and Two as it is now, for most of my life watching them. Sadly, we're in the National League now, in non-league, but still my club. That's my club. He got me in there. He took me there when I think I was 4 to make sure I didn't become a Borough fan. Most of my friends are Borough fans, so they've had Premier League years, League Cups, UEFA Cup campaigns, and I've had who's going to knock us out of the first round of the FA Cup, most of those things. Can we survive relegation this season? That's been my football journey. But maybe that fighting spirit, underdog spirit, against all the odds has served me well when I've got into the world of logistics and supply chain.
Yeah, probably. Although I think that what supporting Hartlepool has done is taken away some of the stress. I seem to have more stress when Arsenal are doing well. In the hope that something happens, as opposed to when they're just stuck in the middle of the table. There's no stress then.
That's true. Yeah.
What about what was your first job as a young lad?
Yeah, I mean, I my dad was very much into. When I was 15, was you need to go out and get a Saturday job, and I'd done paper rounds and things, but the first Saturday job I got was working in a DIY superstore. It was wasn't B&Q, it was a local one called Dickens Home Improvement Hypermarket, and it was on Teesside, and I think there was 2 or 3 of them in the northeast, and it was pushing trolleys around the car park. And then I graduated to sort of bagging sand and lifting paving stones into people's cars. And I think one of my earliest embarrassments doing that job, the bags were sort of 20 kilogram bags, and it was either sand or gravel or stuff, you bagged it. And then the cars were driving, you'd have to lift it. And when I first started, as much as I'd been running around playing football, like I said, it wasn't overall conditioning those days, and I was weak as a kitten, my upper body. Yeah. And my first few goals of lifting these bags into people's cars, I split one of the bags all over somebody's boot, 20 kilograms of sand. That was embarrassing. But I really enjoyed that job. But what I do realise then is, I was a young lad. I was going on to sixth form college, doing my A-levels, and the 2 lads I worked with, I say lads, I think they were both early 60s, while they had me out doing all the bagging, and I was dead keen, and I was shoveling getting as many bags ready as possible. They went and sat in the hut and had a smoke and left the lad to do all the work. But, looking back on that, I sort of get it. That was their full-time job, and they had a bit of a relief from a young, keen Saturday lad, and I don't blame them looking back in a way.
So you're better as a warehouse director in supply chain rather than a warehouse person yourself.
I don't know. I look back at that with fondness. I absolutely loved it, and I loved just getting stuck in and helping out. And I think, in a way, that work ethic of when I was there, I didn't look to cut corners. I wanted to do the best I could, and maybe that was just what was instilled in me, and whether I was getting paid an hourly rate or now in a salaried executive position, is somebody's paying me to do this, so I'd best do my best, because it's a duty to do it as much as a passion, really.
Yeah. And you've worked in a few different places: Sweden with Volvo, France with Renault, Nissan, and the UK. Well, I mean, I count Sunderland up there with Nissan as a foreign country because I'm from London.
Yeah, so do I, from Middlesbrough.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So we might need subtitles for this. But what are the cultural differences that you found from each place?
I have to say that's been one of the most enjoyable parts of my career. Particularly Nissan as a starting point. The company I worked for before Nissan was a retail company. It was very British. I worked for Schneider Electric before that. French company. I did a tiny bit of traveling. That was my first graduate job. But actually, the exposure I got to different cultures at Nissan was incredible. And I guess with hindsight, that ultimately was a French-Japanese fusion, but particularly Nissan Europe, born out of Nissan in Sunderland, which was the sort of Japanese, I would say, very logical, methodical structure of problem solving, teamwork, honour, duty, that continuous improvement mindset, that each function had a role and every team got together and each function knew their role. That methodical way of working, the Japanese way of thinking, is fantastic. And then I guess this is an informal chat, so I would say that sort of gung-ho, I don't know, you call it do or die attitude at Sunderland of our job's to be the best, because I think in a lot of the big car companies, you've got the home country and the car plants there and the HQ, and then you've got the rest of the world plants. And in a way, it was the same in Renault, it was the same in Mitsubishi, similar-ish. Volvo's smaller, and Aston, I guess, is UK-based, but that all the external plants around the world were fighting to win the next model and survive and be competitive. And if you know, that Sunderland was born out of, I guess, a lot of the pit closures and shipyard closures in the northeast. And you had a lot of very skilled engineers and people who became manufacturing car workers, and that will to win, alongside the methodical Japanese training on how to run your business and run the business and solve problems and work together. What a combination that was. And I'd say that's one of the most unique combinations I've ever seen. And that's why the plant in Sunderland is exceptional. And the people there have been such a high standard of people for so many years that was quite a unique thing. And then living and working in France is a different culture. I think France is more, particularly the big French companies, it's a much more centralized culture. So Nissan had regions that were quite independent. Renault was very top down and much more conceptual and theoretical, but quite a strong structure from the center that was mapped out over it. Lots of cultural differences, but a lot of overlaps, which were very, I think, a lot of healthy tension. And I think there were a lot of things in Europe anyway. Renault learned from Nissan and Nissan learned from Renault, as much as maybe both parties wouldn't admit it. France as a country was great to experience. But I would say living in Paris is like London, and it's like Paris and the rest of France and London and the rest of the UK. It's like different worlds. And, Paris is exceptionally busy, very long hours, lots of traffic, that high tension you get in big cities. So quite a difficult work-life balance. You did lots of hours, but then everything shut down in the summer. Everyone went off on holiday and literally everybody left. Yeah. The out of office was on. And if you happened to be there in August and you needed something to be done, it was, where is everyone? From the top to the bottom in the company, they were gone. Yeah. But I really enjoyed my time living in France. And living in Sweden was fantastic. And I'd say Volvo Cars, it's interesting. The work-life balance is phenomenal. The equality there is phenomenal. But I would say Sweden, and there's a reason Sweden are the ones who invented Spotify, Tetra Pak. You learn they've been very innovative on so many areas. Volvo's been, if you think they invented the seatbelt and patented it, but then shared it with everybody. They were the first to go all electric as a declaration. They're in an innovative place, but they drive on consensus. So there's quite a bit of similarity with the Japanese as well, in a way. But that consensus means it might seem slow at the start, but they have innovative ways of working. They then get the consensus and then they go. And I think there's a lot of stuff there about respect and not being disrespectful to colleagues and working cross-functionally. So in a way, I'd say there was a strange hybrid. You wouldn't necessarily think that Japanese and Swedish cultures are the same, but I saw a lot of overlaps there. But working, I got to visit. I was doing that thing with my family the other week where we totted up how many countries we visited. Yeah. I didn't go abroad till I was 17 on holiday with my parents. I think I went to Gran Canaria. Sorry, I tell a lie. I did 2 school trips to France. And then my first family holiday abroad when I was 17. And then I think I've visited like 32 countries since then, all through my career, really, in places I wouldn't have dreamed of going. Japan, Russia, Romania, India, South America. And it's been phenomenal, actually. And traveling really opens your eyes, and I really learned that people ultimately are people, and I've come to the big view that I don't want to go too political here, but nationalism and politics and things is one thing, but wherever you go in the world to work with people, actually we're all the same, and generally people want to do well by each other and want to work with each other and help and get things done. And I really like to embody that spirit, and I think I try and do it in work and try and do it in my personal life as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. I've been very lucky to travel to a lot of countries, and you're right. The average kind of person, they're very similar. They're all nice people. They've all got a sense of humour. They're all, trying their best. So, okay, you get good and bad people everywhere, but the average person you find, almost whether it's China, Russia, the US, and Europe, obviously. It's interesting how the misconceptions of nationalism. I don't mean that in a political sense, but in the sense how people think, other people are. The Germans haven't got a sense of humour, but of course they have. And then the Russians definitely don't have a sense of humour, but again they do, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But in these different places, I think we could probably leave France out of this. But from a food perspective, when I think of the Northeast and Sweden, I must admit, I don't think I think that of the food there. What would you recommend from each of those? What would be a local food that you would recommend from the Northeast or from Sweden?
I've got an obvious one from the Northeast, but if you've got any issue with diabetes or heart problems, don't have it. It's called a chicken parmo, and it originated in Teesside. Basically, well, it started with pork, and it was a pork parmesan, they called it, but we call it a parmo. Mm-hmm. It's basically a piece of chicken that is flattened to be about that big. So it's in a pizza box. You buy it in a pizza box at the end of a night out. Instead of getting a kebab or a pizza, I'll have a parmo. Breadcrumbs, fried. Then you'd have a layer of bechamel sauce and cheese that's grilled on top. Yeah. And I dread to think how many calories are in it. But not only does it fill the pizza box, you get a big portion of chips and a salad. Of course, nobody ever eats the salad. And a bit of garlic sauce to go with it. So it's not the healthiest of foods, but it's anyone I ever take to the Northeast with me who gets a proper one in the Northeast says it's heavenly. Yeah. I've converted family members, friends, you name it. But it is a heart attack on a plate, I have to say. But
it sounds
beautiful. If you like, everyone needs a good takeaway every now and again. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Sweden, there's lots of great things. There's a cliche, meatballs. But the thing I absolutely love, they have, I can't remember the Swedish name for it. It's basically an open prawn sandwich. So it's on 2 bits of sort of that dark rye bread.
Yeah.
With piles of salad and prawns and boiled eggs on it. And I used to love that. Very fresh, very easy, beautiful. It's a speciality in Sweden, sort of an open prawn sandwich. Lovely.
Yeah. It's completely different from the chicken parmo.
Just a bit. Sweden's good. Lots of nice, wholesome food there. Stews and loads of fish, though. And one thing in Sweden that was a bit... So they have a Christmas dinner where they do, and it's a selection of sort of pickled herrings in all different types of pickles. And some of them are okay, but some are a bit, woof. If you're not used to that sort of very strong pickled style fish, it's interesting, but the Swedes love it.
Yeah.
It's like a smorgasbord of different fish and dips and salads, but yeah, food's good in Gothenburg. Really nice. I'd recommend a visit there. Fantastic city.
Yeah. But I can't imagine any of your French Renault colleagues coming over and having the chicken parmo. I'm not sure about that.
No, definitely not.
What about cars? Are you a car enthusiast? I mean, for automotive logistics, I wasn't. I love the industry, but I'm not particularly a car person. Chris Ludwig, who's kind of still there, as far as I know, doesn't even have a car. He used to go around. All right, it's London, it's different, but used to go around on a bicycle. So, are you a car enthusiast?
I daren't say this, but I'm actually not. I need to whisper it. Could get me fired, this comment, but no, I never really have been. I'm ultimately passionate about I guess because of my job, supply chains and how it all fits together.
Yeah,
I think what I love about the automotive industry and supply chains is the complexity of it. And I'm genuinely passionate about that. And I think, I mean, don't be wrong, I think the business and the business models and the brands I have become passionate about. I love that Nissan made the most of every single ounce of its brand and its capability and its efficiency. And I love Volvo Cars' innovation and the innovation on the product and the change that it made to its product over like a 15-year period, how innovative they were trying to be, the business model on going electric first, the product change that they had, the trying to go to B2B and online sales and different packages of ways you could own a Volvo. I thought that was great. And Aston, of course, the brand and the end product, the cars are amazing, but I'm not a petrol head as such. Going back to cars itself, the first car I had, my granddad had it was a Vauxhall Nova estate. So for the kids out there, they became Vauxhall Corsa, didn't they? And this was the boxy one. And he passed away in not about a couple of months after I passed my driving test, and I inherited his old battered Vauxhall Nova. And my dad, the head gasket went. My dad is the opposite. He was a real car person. And he was the type who, he got his first cars in the 60s and he had minis and he took them to bits. So he insisted we replace that head gasket together with a bit of father and son bonding. It took us about a week because you have to take the engine out and take it to bits and put it back together. And when you realise you do all that work to stick a bit of cork in versus a bit of cork that's broken, I thought, So anyway, he did that, but he never got me bought into the mechanics of it. I'm not really an engineering-minded person, but bizarrely, for some reason, I'm a concept and flow-minded person. So I can visualize flows and value chains in my mind, but I can't visualize mechanics, which is interesting. So that's why I never became an engineer, and probably why I'm not a petrol head car person. But I mean, at the end of the day, the cars themselves now are stunning. I mean, if you go back to what a car is now versus that old Vauxhall Nova, it's a piece of art and it's a piece of software these days rather than a mechanical piece of equipment, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a bit disappointed. I thought you were going to say your first car was an Aston Martin.
Well, you heard about my background in Middlesbrough. Sadly not.
Yeah. What other, hobbies or passions do you have outside of work? I mean, we've discussed sport and discussed football, I suppose. What other hobbies or real passions have you got outside?
That's remained with me, obviously. But music, I absolutely love music. I've always been a music lover, mainly sort of indie style music. I mean, I suppose with my age, I'm 51. I went through that. My formative years were all like the Stone Roses and Happy Mondays, that Manchester scene in the late 80s, early 90s. And I guess I've enjoyed that sort of guitar band stuff right through to today. I went to a music festival with my oldest daughter who's in her 20s and her boyfriend for the weekend a couple of weekends ago. Loved it. So that's where I still think I'm 28. I don't realise I'm not, but I can still go strong at those things. So I still like to go to gigs. I've got a group of mates who we stay... we've got a WhatsApp group now. We're all modern. But we tend to get away a couple of weekends a year as a group of lads and or old men now, and generally anchor it around some form of concert or music festival, mini music festival. So that's a passion, and I love reading. And I read anything from fiction to factual stuff, really. So I flip between. So the book I'm reading now is a book called Nexus by Yuval Noah Harari. So that's the type of... he's a guy who wrote a book called Sapiens, which was a bestseller. So that's, for example, about information networks through human history. And it's really then gets stuck into AI and how AI is going to change society and flip how information's used by everybody. And so that's the type of book I read. And then I'll read one of those, and then I'll read an out-and-out spy thriller or a murder thriller or a fantasy book, just to do one and the other, really. So although these days, to be honest with you, I used to, when I was a teenager, I'd be reading till 4 a.m, like raptured in it. But these days, I go to bed and I'll read my book for a bit before bed, and I read about 2 pages and fall asleep. So
you're so tired afterwards
these days.
Yeah.
And I suppose the last thing I've got passionate about is I am more interested in politics now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably since Brexit, so I won't go into it, but it's more that I think that intersection between, I think I until the last few years, thought politics was something that happened in the background.
Yeah.
Business really drove world events, and the global economy would drive politics. And what I've realized in recent years is actually politics is still a pretty significant driver. And we only have to look at Trump and the tariffs. It's not the private sector and the global economic powerhouses that are driving industry. It's actually politics is still very influential. So I wouldn't say I'm a politics nerd by any means, but I've got more of an eye on it now than I ever have, because I've realized how much actually it still does impact lives and the economic situation. And at the end of the day, back to the point about people, my personal view is economics is there so we can all put a roof over our families' heads and feed them. And as long as we can all do that, the world will be a happier place, sort of thing. So I do keep an eye on that more than I ever did right through to arguably my mid-40s. I just didn't really pay any attention to that. But I'd much rather go to a music festival or a really good book or watch a football game, to be fair. That's what I love doing the best.
What was your, I don't know if you remember, what was your first LP? Or did you even have records or discs in those days?
First LP was Adam and the Ants' Prince Charming. I don't think that was the first single I got bought. So how old was I? And that was probably 1981. So I was like 6 or 7 at the time. But I do remember I got that for Christmas one year. The first LP I probably actively bought myself. That's a difficult one to remember.
Yeah.
It was probably some weird acid house LP, because I think before I got into the indie music in about 1988, 89, I was into that acid house stuff and the dance music because I thought it was cool. But really, I was more into the guitar music when it came in. So a sort of like New Order and the Smiths and Joy Division, I probably discovered when I was older rather than when I was a teenager, when they were going strong, really. So yes.
So there's not going to be any photos of you going back with makeup on and all that kind of different.
No, I was slightly too young for that part of it. I was just. So I probably actually, you'll see, I'm growing my hair now. Yeah. This is probably more like the hair I had in 1990 when I was 16, actually. So maybe this is my midlife crisis haircut. I don't know, or I'm just growing it because I thought, why not grow it while I can?
Well, I just think you're showing off.
Well,
I'm trying to grow my hair as well, but not that you'd notice. And what about films? What sort of film genres? I was saying earlier to someone that, I say to my kids, I used to like cowboy films, and they're like, what? What's that?
Yeah. I suppose, I am that classic age of Star Wars, probably, I was obsessed with Star Wars as a kid. Yeah. And got taken to the cinema, definitely to see The Empire Strikes Back. And again, I'm going to be a nerd here. I think that was 1981. I think Star Wars, the first one was 77. I probably watched that on a VHS recording first at some point. One where you had to physically go over and press the buttons.
Yeah.
Another one for the kids there. Stuff like that. But I love Star Wars, and I think as I've got older, that fantasy stuff stayed with me. I read Lord of the Rings and those books when I was a kid, so I loved it as an adult when those movies came out. But I like everything. Obviously, most people now are into Netflix or streamer services, Apple TV, and so I like crime thrillers and dramas, murder mystery, spy thrillers. Yeah. So the one I'm watching now that I'm a bit late to the party is something on Apple TV called Slow Horses.
Oh, I love that.
Thing with Gary Oldman. Brilliant. Yeah. I'm absolutely loving it. It's one of the best things I've seen in years. That's outstandingly good. So, I like a bit of everything, really. But so as a kid, I've gone from like science fiction, but now I tend to like thrillers and spy movies and crime drama type stuff, all the good ones like that.
And what about going back to work a bit? What if you weren't in supply chain and logistics? What would be your dream job now, apart from forgetting the football a bit? Although I don't know if you've still got a chance. I still think I've got a chance, and I'm 63. But I don't know, what would be your dream away from supply chain and logistics?
Well, my dream job, and this is a stupid one because there's only about 10 people who do it. I've reflected on this a lot. My dream job would have been, I think, being a commentator on Test Match Special.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's all ex-players and things now, but they used to have journalists in there.
Yeah.
Because I think that is you spend your whole life working around the world in the summertime, watching cricket. And I think what I loved about Test Match Special, which is a very English thing, isn't it, is half the time they're nattering on about a cake somebody sent into them, or a pigeon that's landed on the gasworks over the ground, or a funny story from 20 years ago. Because I think they've got like a different vibe to the TV commentary, and it was just a bit of a chat and a laugh. And I would have loved to have done that. At one point, I thought I would have liked to have been a sports journalist. Mm-hmm. But I suppose bringing it back to business now, I'm going to be sad now. My ideal job now actually would be having a job where the supply chain or the value chain in its broadest sense is the strategic role in the company that knits the brand and creates that end-to-end operating model. Because I do still think it's a bit siloed. Yeah. And that overall value chain responsibility in a holistic role. Yeah. From now in my career, that's what I would love to get in an organisation, to be fair. But one where an organisation says we realise, that living, breathing value chain where it's not just the parts price and procurement driving, it's not just the logistics cost and supply chain do it. Yeah. It's not just the tied up capital and the inventory and the obsolescence. It's how does all that breathe and beat to the heartbeat of the business model or the brand or the customer demand. So in an ideal world from now going forward, because I recognise I'd probably find it hard to get to be on Test Match Special as a commentator. That would be my ideal job now. So in a way, I'm really bought into that whole value chain piece. And so I have been, that's my serious answer, I guess.
Yeah, they're flirting with that a little bit now, the car makers, I think. A few JLR and some others, Volvo themselves, saying have got that kind of position in there a little bit more. So hopefully we will see that.
I just think it's probably going to be 15, 20 years down the line by the time it gets there in its purest sense, I think.
Yeah.
By which time I hope I'm retired and have my feet up on a beach.
Yeah. Would that be your dream vacation, a beach kind of a holiday?
Actually not. I get too bored on a beach. I think at the moment we do tend to do beach holidays because if you have 1 or 2 weeks at a time, then that's But I think I used to like active holidays where you have a combo, getting out and about, doing something physical, trekking, walking somewhere, visiting places, doing a bit of sport because I like to be a bit active. But I'm not someone, going back to my look at my skin, I can't sit in the sun for more than about 5 minutes. So just sitting sunbathing doesn't work for me. I tend to go bright pink very fast and overheat.
What do you do for relaxation? If the end of the weekends or something where I know in our industry or in your industry, the weekends are scarce. But how do you relax away from work completely?
Yeah, that's tough, actually. For me now, I've reached a point where I have to have done some form of sport and got it done, whether it's getting on my exercise bike or going for a very slow jog these days with my old man's bad back. Because then I feel like I've done something where you get the endorphins and I feel like I've done something worthwhile for my physical health and it clears the brain. And what I find now is if I don't fit that in, I still feel that tension that comes from the mental pressure and stress from work, because let's be honest, that's a real thing. And I think most of us at senior positions, we have that. So some form of physical activity is a must. I think we've still got a young daughter we've got 2 old daughters who are now forging their own career. And you've got Anthony forging his career. But we've still got a daughter in school. So most of there is a routine to weekends now. running her around and doing those things. But the sport bit is a must, because if I don't do that, there's still that niggle and I'm still tense. And most weekdays it's hard because I get in too late from work. Yeah. Even if I have good intentions, I want to leave early, get on the exercise bike, have a decent evening. It's wiped out. But at least on weekends, I've got to do something, Louis. Otherwise, I don't really feel like I've relaxed if I can't get that bit out of my system.
Yeah. And in your career, you've had a variety of things, whether it's, working in different places and different, areas and so on. What advice would you give your young self now, or to other young people, apart from, do or don't go into logistics? I don't know which one it would be then. But what advice would you give kind of after the career you've had, and you've still got a lot more to go, what advice would you give your young self or to younger people about, what they should have in their mind as they progress forward in life?
Yeah. I think the advice I would give is something I've always tried to do, but then there is some advice I'll give myself is what I've always tried to do is, and it goes back to that story about pushing trolleys or bagging sand, is try and make it something where you're trying to do the best with the role you've got at the time, because try and make it something that's a passion one way or another, because at the end of the day, there are very few jobs, I think, out there that are a vocation for someone. So if I'd made it as a footballer or a test match special commentator, I guess that would have been a job where my genuine childhood passion would have been my job. I've ended up falling into procurement. I ended up falling into automotive, and then it evolved in supply chain. But the last 30 years of my career, or the 30 years from start to finish to now, generally it's gone in a flash. And I think you spend most of your time in work. So at least try and do your best with it, push the boundaries, fill the space of your day. Don't count the clock down, try and do more and try and positively influence those around you. And it doesn't always work, and your career is a bit up, down, around. You do have points where it's very frustrating, but I think if you always have that attitude, I'm going to try and make it passionate, I'm going to try and do my best, then that's the best you can do. Yeah. And I suppose that's allowed it to flow in a way, and things have happened. I think you have to do your best, and you have to do well, and you need a bit of luck. And I think understanding that you need a bit of luck and your career is not a linear thing. And I think there's too much online where if you do X, Y, and Z, this will lead you to being successful in this way and that. And I'm humble enough to understand yes, I've obviously done some things right. So I've progressed in my career, and certain people picked me and said, we think he can do that job. But you also need a bit of luck, and it's a bit right place, right time. And not everybody has a straight line. And I think we set people up for bad expectations by saying, if you do A, B, and C, it will equal D. And that's not life. So be prepared for disappointment and frustrations. And I still have a lot of frustrations, but that's normal. But maybe the advice I would give myself is also try and do something that you enjoy, if possible. Yeah. Because then it's easier. And I think if you're good at certain things in school, or you recognize that you're good in certain things, try and steer yourself towards those. Yeah. And the best advice I ever had, I was on some sort of, and it's one plus point for Nissan as well. They were brilliant at doing training for people at all levels and in all types. And I, at one point, had some sort of it was on a leadership scheme. We got a sort of a career coach to do. It was a little bit of mentoring. And I'd spent a lot of time taking my annual appraisals and being told the things that I wasn't doing well and trying to do those things well. And a lot of those things were necessarily things that I wasn't very good at. So I was trying to be good at things I wasn't good at. And actually, the career coach said, try and be the best at the things that you are good at, because then you'll be the best version of yourself. Yeah. And actually, that's not advice I'm giving people, it's advice I got, and it's the best advice I ever had. Yeah. By a long distance.
Yeah, no, that's very good advice. I do think Nissan Sunderland has been a great kind of training ground, leadership course for the global industry. I mean, the amount of top people globally made it in Japan, and John Martin, the late Colin McDonald. You've had some great people come out.
People like Colin Dodge, Trevor Mann, they were exceptional. Mark Sutcliffe, who was one of my ex-bosses, outstanding professional business leader, actually. And, people like Colin and Trevor started as manufacturing people, and Nissan trained them around all the parts of the business, and they became out-and-out executive business leaders and exceptionally smart. I think they were two of the first non-Japanese people to get on the board. Same later with John Martin, really very bright people, but the foundation the company gave them as well was exceptional.
Yeah. Okay, then. Well, I think people, I've said I wanted to make this different from your speeches and things that we hear at conferences. But I think that one thing that's come across today in this conversation is what I often hear after you've spoken at an event is that you're always passionate, you're always honest, you're always humble. And I think that's come across very well today as well. So thanks for your time, Martin. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it too.
I have. I always love talking to you, and I think probably I would say is it's nice to be called humble, but I think you have to be when you're from Middlesbrough, because your mates will soon bring you down to size if you don't remember that we're all just human beings, and we eat, sleep, and breathe. That's. And some of us have a bit of luck and some of us don't. And I think it's good to remember that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you very much, Martin. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone else will. But they might have to Google test match special, apart from those in Asia, maybe Australia. But I think everyone might have to Google, test match special. But that's a great cricket radio program if you're unaware. But apart from that, thank you very much, Martin, and really good to speak to you and to see you. And as always, we'll stay in touch as well. Thank you.
Okay.